All right, good evening, everybody. We are ready for 2 Kings 13, and I think we're going to start at about verse 10. We have a good bit to cover tonight. We are skipping Joel for now, and we're going to go as far as we can, and we'll come back to Joel. Really, Joel fits during the time of Jehu. Probably. There are debates on when Joel prophesied. He doesn't give us specific time markers like some of the other prophets do. But Lord willing, if we are able to finish up tonight, then we will focus on him on Wednesday night, and then that'll close this quarter out. And Austin and Brother Lonnie will take care of Brother Austin and Brother Lonnie. So we'll take care of the review on the next Wednesday night after our singing night on March 3rd. So we're coming here to the son of Jehoahaz, who's an interesting person because even though he follows in the path of Jehu, worshiping Baal, he does, not worshiping Baal, following in Jeroboam's line, he does cry out to the Lord and is delivered. And we made mention of this last time in verse 5, therefore the Lord gave Israel a Savior. I came across one cross-reference, and I don't know what you think about this, but maybe as a reference to Elisha, who is referred to over and over as a defender. And we'll even see that in tonight's text as somebody who is a protector for the people of Israel. So now we're coming to his son, Jehoash, and we'll focus on these other the kings in Judah in just a bit. All right, so really there's not a lot to say about Jehoash in verses 10 to 13, except for that he didn't depart from the way of Jeroboam, which is said about a lot of kings. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add about him, but I don't have to read all of that unless you want to.
No, I don't.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to go quickly then. All right. Anybody else have anything about Jehoash? So you got Jehu, Jehoahaz, Jehoash. So he's Jehu's grandson on the throne.
The main thing is God's not changed anything. He still doesn't want his people destroyed.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Okay, now let's read in verses 14 and following. Now, when Elisha had fallen sick with the illness of which he was to die, Joash, king of Israel, went down to him and wept before him, crying, my father, the chariots of Israel and his horsemen. And Elisha said to him, take a bow and arrows. So he took a bow and arrows. Then he said to the king of Israel, draw the bow. And he drew it. And Elisha laid his hands on the king's hands, and he said, open the window eastward. And he opened it. Then Elisha said, shoot. And he shot. And he said, the Lord's arrow of victory, the arrow of victory over Syria. For you shall fight the Syrians in Aphek until you have made an end of them. And he said, take the arrows. And he took them. He said, strike the ground with them. And he struck 3 times and stopped. Then the man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Syria until you had made an end of it. But now you only strike down Syria. You will strike down Syria only 3 times. So that language of my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen, I think we see that used a couple of times in reference maybe to when we think about the whirlwind that takes Elijah up, but also when that's revealed to the servant of Elisha as being the defense between Israel and and between Israel and Syria. And then even in addition to that, there's a time where I think Elisha is referred to as the chariots of Israel and its horsemen in one way. So Jehoash sees him as a defender of Israel in a significant way, at least a channel of God's power. And so when he's dying, even though he is a Jeroboam follower, he recognizes Elisha as a means of God's merciful defense. And so he doesn't want him to die.
You already mentioned he may have been, he was a reference to him being the Savior.
Yes.
That is mentioned in these verses.
That's right.
And that's probably why he wept.
Yeah.
Because he was dying.
Yeah. So then we've got this strange arrow thing. I say strange because maybe we don't understand the connection here. He's told to shoot it. He shoots it in a direction where Elisha is able to celebrate and say, you're going to have victory over Syria. And then tells him to take the arrows and smash them on the ground. And he does so 3 times, which you would say, well, isn't that perfectly sufficient number of time to smack random arrows on the ground? But Elisha sees something in that I think probably indicates a lack of commitment to listening to the instructions of Elisha. And maybe that's a weird symbolism, but it really makes sense when we think about Joash, right? We think about somebody who is thankful for what Elisha does, right? You're going to have victory over the Syrians. I'm sure there's gratitude for that. But then not a total commitment to listening to Elisha when he gives instructions, right? So Elisha says jump, and instead of asking how high, he just jumps barely as high. No, instead of striking it with vigor, he does it 3 times. He's like, is that good enough? And what Elisha sees in that is a lack of commitment to following through and listening to the instructions that are given. And so for that reason, he won't finish the job. And so he won't be able to defeat Syria completely.
The way I have it wrote down is he says take the arrows. He meant all of them. And he only struck 3.
Yeah.
He struck with 3.
Right. So yeah, you can imagine like if they said take the Syrians. Well, how's Joash going to respond to that? I'm afraid he would respond to it like he did the arrows, right? And not with the diligence and the seriousness that he needed to. Okay. Anything else through verse 19? So Elisha died. They buried him. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
You may want to mention something about him when he draws the bow and Elisha puts his hands on it.
You think he's directing him in where he's shooting them, or what? What's your idea on that?
I think I read that he was showing him that he had the power. Elisha had the power of God.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let me find it here. Yeah. Victory's not going to come through Joash. It's going to come through God. That's what he's showing him there.
Yeah, so that Elisha has to help with even the shooting of the arrows if there's going to be victory coming. Yeah, I think that's good. So Elisha died, and they buried him. Now bands of Moabites used to invade the land in the spring of the year, and as a man was being buried, behold, a marauding band was slain, and the man was thrown into the grave of Elisha. And as soon as the man touched the bones of Elisha, he revived and stood on his feet. We've seen some amazing acts of Elisha, and it's almost as if he is still a channel of God's power even after he's died. He keeps giving life even after he's died. We see this in this kind of connection. Remember with the man of God and the old prophet and where they had him buried and then they buried and those people were resurrected. There seems to be this divine power that is still resting in their flesh and bones even after they're gone. And we see that even with kind of a random occasion of these marauding bands of Moabites with the life of Elisha. All right. You want to take us to the end of 13? Yes, sir.
Question about that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take away from the significance of it. But I just kind of wondered when I read that, the grave, would have just been like during that time, like an open cave that they would have thrown multiple bodies in?
Yeah.
Or maybe was it in the ground and Elisha's grave was left open? What do you think? I mean, that was just interesting to me.
That's a great question because the way it sounds is it's almost like it's just a hole and I assume it was in a cave side or like a rock cleft of some sort. I think that was probably the primary way of burial. So that would make more sense to me, as you're saying, than that. I don't know that they did a lot of digging in the dirt burials in Israel just because of the terrain and things like that. But I may be wrong about that. If somebody else has something on that, that's be helpful. Okay.
Where did we get to? 22?
22, if you're ready for that.
Now Hazael, king of Syria, oppressed Israel all the days of Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious to them and had compassion on them, and he turned toward them because of the covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and would not destroy them, nor has he cast them from his presence until now. When Hazael, king of Syria, died, Benadad, his son, became king in his place. Then Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, took again from Benadad, the son of Hazael, the cities that he had taken from Jehoahaz, his father, in war. 3 times Joash defeated him and recovered the cities of Israel. Hazael still oppressing them, or whatever you want to call it. But the Lord's not going to allow his people to be destroyed. I already said that earlier. He's not cast them from his presence. He's still watching over them. He sees the oppression, and he would save them because of the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But it says there also that well, I don't see that either. Maybe I read it in a different version about something about the future, the enlightenment of the Gentiles would come through that. So basically, this, I don't know if you have anything else on that. Hazael dies, and then the dad, he seems like he's not as strong or forceful or something, and so they're able to take back some cities. So Joash gets his 3 victories. He gets his 3 victories there that the arrows represented earlier, I suppose.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a significant passage there too, because it just shows again how God remembers his covenant
That's
that
right.
he makes with his people, and we can make application to that as well.
That's right.
Over and over.
Yeah, and so notice at the end of verse 23, my text says, nor has he cast them from his presence until now. Is that what everybody says, something like that? So it seems to me that might be somewhat of an indicator about the time when 2 Kings was written. 1st and 2 Kings would have been written. Until now. It's almost as if somebody there is watching either Israel being taken captive, but I think maybe even more likely Judah being taken into captivity and saying he has cast them from his presence. Now, it's not permanent, right, because we still have the promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it's definitely more serious than what was going on in the days of Jehoahaz, right? It's definitely beyond that, because he has, in some sense, cast them from his presence. I don't know if this is a connection, but just ponder this with me. The phrase when it says he was thrown into the grave of Elisha is exactly the same word. He was cast into the throne, did I say grave? Cast into the grave of Elisha. So he was cast in, then Israel will be cast away. Chapter 17, verse 20 will say that God cast them from his presence. But is there maybe like a illusion in the life-giving nature that it's not permanent, it's not over? Now, for Israel, like the northern kingdom, as a national political society, it is over. But it's not over in the sense of the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And certainly not true in the spiritual sense of that it's not over. But I do think that this maybe gives us an indicator of the timing of the writing of 1st and 2nd Kings, is as they're going into captivity, he's able to say, God was patient. So one writer said this: Israel's later destruction must therefore be seen as a last, desperate, just result of a nation's choosing punishment over blessing, death over life. That is, if we can look at the history of Israel from 931 all the way down to the time of Jehoahaz and Jehoash, and God still has not cast them out of his presence, then when he does cast them out of his presence, we've got to say, well, it must have gotten worse, right? Because it was already pretty bad, and he was withholding his judgment on them. But when they do get that judgment brought on them, it must be because they made a decision. We're choosing punishment, not blessing. We're choosing death, not life. And they did that by the way that they lived. So yes, he does maintain and hold on to his promises, because even when all that's happening, especially when it happens to Judah, they're still pointing forward to what's coming on the other side. Okay.
Partial obedience is failure.
That's right.
That's what I say I learned from that story.
Very good. Very good. Okay. All right. You want to take us through some of 14, or?
Well, I think I made my notes from 2 Chronicles 25.
That's great. That's great.
It's the same thing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
2 Chronicles 25 and 2 Kings 14 are basically the same thing. There'll be some different wording. Let's 2 Chronicles 25, verse 1. Amaziah was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoiadan of Jerusalem, and he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, yet not with a whole heart. And as soon as the royal power was firmly his, he killed his servants who had struck down the king his father, but he did not put their children to death, according to what is written in the law in the book of Moses, where the Lord commanded, fathers shall not die because of their children, nor children die because of their fathers, but each one shall die for his own sin. Then Amaziah assembled the men of Judah and set them by fathers' houses under commanders. Well, let me stop right there. Let me stop before we go into that war there. It says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, yet not with his whole heart. He liked the idea of righteousness, it sounds like, but he liked the idea of his own righteousness. And that's a problem. And it's a problem for us when we try to set up our own righteousness. He kills the men that killed his father, but not their children. We've seen a lot of whole families killed when a king change takes place, but not here. And it says he knows about a law, and that law is in Deuteronomy there, Deuteronomy 24:16 that he quotes there. Father shall not die because of their children, nor children die because of their fathers, but each shall die for his own sin. And I think we could read Ezekiel 18:4, I believe it is, if we wanted to turn there. But it basically says that.
The soul that sins shall die.
The
Right?
soul that sins shall die.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe there's some contrast to like Jehu and what he does when he comes and takes office. You know, he kills everybody, even people who are only loosely and tangentially associated with the whole thing. It's interesting. So in 2 Chronicles, it says that he didn't follow with his whole heart, but in the 2 Kings passage, it says he followed, but not like David. And so you see how the interesting comparison there, that he was better than most, but he wasn't all that he could have been, and that he wasn't devoted like David. And we say, well, David wasn't perfect, yes, but he followed the Lord with his whole heart. And Amaziah was a good man in a lot of ways, and did good in taking care of this situation, but didn't do it with his whole heart.
I think King James says not with a perfect heart.
That's right.
Okay. This battle that's about to take place, I think there's only one verse in 2 Kings that even mentions it. But this here gives us some more about it. Then Amaziah assembled the men of Judah and set them by fathers' houses under commanders of thousands and hundreds for all Judah and Benjamin. He mustered those 20 years old and upward, and found that they were 300,000 choice men, fit for war, able to handle spear and shield. He hired also 100,000 mighty men of valor from Israel for 100 talents of silver. But a man of God came to him and said, O king, do not let the army of Israel go with you, for the Lord is not with Israel, with all these Ephraimites. But go, act, be strong for the battle. Why should you suppose that God will cast you down before the enemy? For God has power to help or to cast down. And Amaziah said to the man of God, but what shall we do about the 100 talents that I have given to the army of Israel? The man of God answered, the Lord is able to give you much more than this. Then Amaziah discharged the army that had come to him from Ephraim to go home again, and they became very angry with Judah and returned home in fierce anger. But Amaziah took courage and led out his people and went to the valley of Salt and struck down 10,000 men of Seir. The men of Judah captured another 10,000 alive and took them to the top of the rock and threw them down from the top of the rock, and they all were dashed to pieces. But the men of the army of whom Amaziah sent back, not letting them go with him to battle, raided the cities of Judah from Samaria to Beth-horon and struck down 3,000 people in them and took much spoil. That's pretty interesting. He gathers 300,000, hires 100,000, is told not to take the 100,000, sends them home. They get mad. He goes and defeats Edom there, but the men of Israel that are sent home, on their way home, killed 3,000 of Judah and plundered the cities. This jealousy, envy, strife, it's been going on for a long time between Israel and Judah, and that's the division.
That's right.
They probably wanted to get, spoils from battle. I'm sure you're gonna say that. And since they were cheated out of that,
Yeah. They don't get it.
they decided to get it their own way. I guess.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at the King's passage in 14, 8 through 10, it looks like, the way I'm understanding it is that Amaziah is angry with Jehoash and saying, all right, we need to face each other. And I think probably in response to what these guys had done. Isn't that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I've got to that part yet.
Oh, okay. Is that later on in Chronicles?
I think it is.
Okay, all right.
Maybe not.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I'll wait then.
Yeah, I think it's next part there.
Oh, 14 through 16, maybe. Oh, verse 20, maybe. Okay, yes, that's fine. We can wait.
Yeah, 17.
All right. Forget what I said until just a minute from now.
I knew that was somewhere in there. You want to keep going here?
Yeah, that's you can if you want, or I can, whatever you want.
Go ahead.
Okay, so verse 14 in 2 Chronicles 25. Now it happened after Amaziah came from striking down the Edomites, he brought the gods of the sons of Seir, set them up as his gods, worshipped them, and burned incense to them. Just consider the foolishness of that, right? Like in a world where it's like considering who wins is whose God's more powerful, and he brings them back and worships them. It doesn't even make uncommon sense. So then the anger of Yahweh burned against Amaziah, and he sent him a prophet who said to him, why have you sought the gods of the people who have not delivered their own people from your hand? Now it happened that as he was talking with him, the king said to him, have we ever given you to be a royal counselor? Stop. Why should you be struck down? Then the prophet stopped and said, I know that God has counseled to destroy you because you have done this and have not listened to my counsel. Then Amaziah, king of Judah, took counsel and sent it to Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, the son of Jehu, the king of Israel, saying, come, let us face each other. This is where I was talking about in 2 Kings. And Joash said, the king of Israel sent to Amaziah, king of Judah, saying, the thorn bush which was in Lebanon sent to the cedar which was in Lebanon, saying, give your daughter to my son as a wife. But a beast of the field that was in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thorn bush. You said, behold, you have struck down Edom, and your heart has lifted you up to boast. Now stay at home, for why should you provoke calamity so that even you would fall and Judah with you? But Amaziah would not listen, for it was from God that he might give them into the hand of Joash, because they had sought the gods of Edom. So Joash the king of Israel went up, and he and Amaziah the king of Judah faced each other at Beth-shemesh, which belongs to Judah, and Judah was defeated by Israel, and they fled each to his tent. Then Joash king of Israel seized Amaziah the king of Judah, the son of Joash, the son of Jehoahaz, at Beth-shemesh, brought him down to Jerusalem, and broke the wall of Jerusalem from the gate of Ephraim to the corner gate 400 cubits. And he took all the gold and silver and all the utensils which was found in the house of God with Obed-Edom and the treasures of the king's house, the hostages also, and returned to Samaria. I'll just read the rest of it right now just to finish up. And Amaziah the son of Joash king of Judah lived 15 years after the death of Joash, Jehoahaz king of Israel, son of Jehoahaz king of Israel. Now the rest of the acts of Amaziah from first to last, behold, are they not written in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel? Now from the time that Amaziah turned away from following Yahweh, they conspired against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. But they sent after him to Lachish and put him to death there. Then they carried him on horses and buried him with his fathers in the city of Judah. So we have this sharp turn in the life of Amaziah, where he was somewhat devoted to the Lord, but not with his whole heart. Then he goes to Edom, brings back their gods, and then God is going to use Israel, especially King Jehoash or Joash, to bring judgment on them. And you can see his reign is this line here, 796 to 767. He will be captured and held as a prisoner. That's when Uzziah basically will take over pretty quickly into his reign. But it's interesting when he says we need to face each other. The little proverb that Joash uses, this is 2 Chronicles 25:18. The thorn bush which was in Lebanon sent to the cedar which was in Lebanon, saying, give your daughter to my son as a wife. It's almost like, think about the comparison of a thorn bush to a cedar, right? Here's this prickly little annoying thing that speaks to one of the great cedars of Lebanon and basically is calling for maybe being on equal terms, maybe making an alliance or something like that. And then this beast of the field that was in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thorn bush. So I assume that this is the idea of maybe the problems that have been caused in Israel. And now what the commander or what the king of Israel is saying to the king of Judah is, don't be so proud over your defeat of Edom when you had, 300,000 men going against 10,000 men. Don't be so uplifted by that now you think you can come against me and everything works out fine. And what does Amaziah do? He doesn't listen. So the king of Israel is trying to provide him some common sense and saying, hey, count the cost before you go into battle with me. And Amaziah won't listen. The man of God comes to him and says, listen, if you go this direction, this will be judgment on you because you've gone after the gods of Edom. And he doesn't listen to him either. And the prophet says, because you're doing this and aren't listening to me, judgment's coming down. And that's exactly what does happen. Anything else on all that? Really, that's the issue, isn't it? It's the sin. Yes, that's a problem. But it's that the prophet comes and tells him how to fix this problem. And Amaziah says, no thanks, I'm just going to go to battle anyway, and we'll just keep doing it this way. Well, because you refuse to listen, that's what's happening.
That loss there made him unpopular among his own people.
That's right.
And they got him.
Yeah, they actually hunt him down in Lachish. Yeah, very good. Okay. Let's see. So that takes us to the beginning of 2 Chronicles 26 or 2 Kings 14. Let me make just this note. Austin and I were talking about this before. Uzziah is how we normally refer to him because that's basically how he's referred to in all of the 2 Chronicles account. He will be called Azariah in chapter, that takes us to 2 Kings 15. He will be called Azariah at the beginning of 2 Kings 15 and verse 1, but then referred to as Uzziah in other places. And really his whole reign is summarized in about 7 verses, and we get a whole chapter in 2 Chronicles summarizing his reign. And it's a story that maybe is familiar to some of us. You want me to go through it?
Well, I want to ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
In one of the accounts of in Matthew, is he the Ozias?
In the genealogy?
In the genealogy, yeah. Is that, or am I just...
Maybe. I don't know. Let me flip over there and look.
Ozias. And I may have it out of order or something. I don't know.
Let's see. So I've got him as Uzziah in this translation, but...
Right. I think one translation says...
Oh, yeah. The King James has it as Ozias. But modern translations do it as Uzziah. So I wonder if it's just written different. Maybe that's more of a... for example, in the King James, in the book of Hebrews, it talks about Joshua bringing them into the land. It translates it Jesus, because in the Greek it would have been Yeshua or something like that. So yeah, I think that's him, Ozias. So I should put /Ozias up there just in case, but to make it even better. No, that's good. That's helpful. So notice this is going to be a co-regency with his father. He will also, oh, that's wrong. Don't look at that. We're not talking about Joel yet. If we keep going, he will have a co-regency at the end of his reign with his son because of what's going to happen to him in chapter 26. But during his reign, there will be 5 kings in Israel just during his reign. So you'll have Jehoash, Jeroboam II, Zechariah, Shallum, and then whoever comes after. Is it Pekah, Menahem? There's a lot that happens all in the northern period just during his reign. And we'll read about them mostly in, so Zechariah, then Shallum, then Menahem, then Pekahiah, then Pekah. So that would just be during, like when he's just reigning on his own and not in a co-regency with his father, that all those kings are coming. So anyway, thinking about Uzziah, I think it's better to look at 2 Chronicles 26 on that because it gives us more detail. And in 2 Chronicles 26, the first part of that is that he is described as a good king. So this is verse 2. He built Eloth and restored it to Judah after the king slept with his fathers. Uzziah was 16 years old when he became king, and he reigned 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jechaliah of Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his father Amaziah had done. And he continued to seek God in the days of Zechariah, who had understanding through the vision of God, and as long as he sought Yahweh, God made him succeed. Then he went out and fought against the Philistines and broke down the wall of Gath and the wall of Jabneh and the wall of Ashdod. And he built cities in the area of Ashdod and among the Philistines. And God helped him against the Philistines and against the Arabians who lived in Gurbaal and the Meunites. The Ammonites also gave tribute to Uzziah, and his fame extended to the border of Egypt, for he became very strong. Moreover, Uzziah built towers in Jerusalem at the corner gate and at the valley gate and at the corner buttress and strengthened them. He also built towers in the wilderness and hewed many cisterns, for he had much livestock, both in the Shephelah and in the plain. He also had plowmen and vine dressers in the hill country and the fertile fields, for he loved the soil. Moreover, Uzziah had a military force which could wage war, which went out for military duty by divisions according to the number of their muster, prepared by the hand of Jeiel, the scribe, and Maaseiah, the officer, under the hand of Hananiah, one of the king's officials. The total number of the heads of the households of mighty men of valor was 2,600. And under their hand was a mighty army of 307,500 who could wage war with mighty power to help the king against the enemy. Moreover, Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, body armor, bows, and stones for sling. In Jerusalem, he also made devices of war devised by skillful designers to be on the towers and on the corners for the purpose of shooting arrows and great stones. Hence his fame was spread afar, for he was marvelously helped until he was strong. So up until verse 15, how would we describe the reign of Uzziah? Very good, tremendous. And why? God's with him. Notice that phrase, helped. He was marvelously helped until he was strong. Really, this is summarized very quickly in 2 Kings 15, that he does what's right in the eyes of the Lord. There are limitations to that. He doesn't take away the high places, but that he is faithful to the Lord. And then, well, let's just do it like this. Then what happens? He got proud. And specifically, what does he want to go in and be able to do? He wants to burn incense, but that's reserved for the priest. That's exactly right. And they try to stop him. Verse 20, Azariah, the chief priest, back up against verse 18. They stood against Uzziah the king and said to him, "It is not for you, Uzziah, to burn incense to Yahweh, but for the priests, the sons of Aaron, who are set apart as holy to burn incense. Get out of the sanctuary, for you have been unfaithful and will have no honor from the Lord God." They are telling him, don't do this. But God has helped him, which has made him believe that he has helped himself, and that he has helped himself so much to the extent that he can do whatever he wants to do, including disregarding the law of God. And the important instruction that we've got to learn from the book of Kings is that even the king wasn't the main authority. That the prophets and the priests were the ones who were to be the caretakers of the law, and ultimately God was the authority. And people who listened to that could guide the king, and the king didn't get to just make up the rules as he went. But Uzziah doesn't listen to them, and what happens to him? He becomes a leper. He becomes a leper. And his son Jotham will become king at the time, filling in as a regent, as a caretaker for him, until he dies, and then Jotham will take over the reign on his own. Okay, anything about him? Anything else about him?
I just wrote down that his pride didn't stop him from doing right. He made him go beyond
That's right.
authority.
Yeah, that's right. Almost like he could make the rules himself and not have to worry about the limitations that were.
And people try to assume that role.
Yeah. Which, that maybe this is an interesting illustration. I've never thought about it exactly this way and making this connection. But Hebrews 7 makes the point that Jesus, being of the tribe of Judah, is able to serve as a priest. And I wonder if reading that, if anybody thought, Isaiah tried that, and look how that went out. Well, it didn't go very well at all. So what must have happened? Well, there must have been a change of the law. And really, I think that's a great passage for thinking about how God's silence sometimes is restrictive, and at least in the case of when God is specific about something that limits other options. And in this case, Isaiah could say, well, where's the passage that says that I can't do this? But that's not how they argue with him, is it? The way they argue with him is they say, this is reserved for us, right? God has granted this privilege to us, and so you're not allowed to do this. And so for Jesus to be able to come and serve as a priest from the tribe of Judah must have meant a change of the law, as the Hebrew writer makes the point in Hebrews 7, 12 through 14, something like that. Okay, anything else through verse 7? All right. Well, we can go fairly quickly, I think, through these kings. You've got Zechariah, who is the son of, where am I?
Chapter verse 1.
I think I've messed up my chart here. Kind of looks like a mess, doesn't it?
Wait a minute before you go further.
Yeah, you just take over until I can figure out what in the world I've done.
Let me ask another question about, it says, the rest of the acts of Isaiah from first to last, Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, wrote. I was wondering if they have that record.
Oh, where is this?
26, 22. Chapter 26, 22.
Oh, yes. So Isaiah 6, verse 1, in the days of Isaiah, where he's called into the holy place. All right, so don't look at this right here for right now. This is totally messed up. I have no idea why that's right there, because he does not. Am I right? This is going to frustrate me.
Well, the verse you mentioned there, Isaiah just says that his visions came during those eyes. Right?
Yeah. Okay. Here's what happened. I skipped forward. Jeroboam does belong right there. We skipped to chapter 15, didn't we? We didn't read about Jeroboam the second in chapter 14 of Kings.
No, and I believe I have that.
Okay. All right. Whew. I thought this had been wrong the whole time. This is right. I just skipped that paragraph.
Yeah.
All right.
2 Kings 15, 23 through 29 is not in 2 Chronicles 20.
That's right. Because he's a king of Israel. Yes, very good. Okay. So let's go back to here before we keep going. Whew. Heart was palpitating. I didn't know what was happening. All right. Okay. I couldn't, and I'm like, he belongs somewhere, but I don't know where I'm supposed to put him. Okay. Jeroboam the second. Jeroboam the second reigns, you can say, for 41 years. He is a wicked, wicked man. It's a long and evil reign. And it is interesting. This is the days of Jonah. It will be the days of Amos, at least during a part of his reign, the end of it, and the days of Hosea as well. But we're going towards the downward trend of Israel headed towards judgment, which I think is why we're getting so many prophets right here. Written prophets saying, you got to stop. You got to turn around. Judgment's coming. You need to repent, on and on and on. Jonah will be the one, we will not talk about him in this class, but I think Lonnie and Austin will talk about him next time in the next quarter. But he prophesies during the time of Jeroboam II, who is able to extend Israel back to, maybe we would say, its rightful territory, the territory that it had been basically originally promised. And I want you to notice this, verse 26. For the Lord saw that the affliction of Israel was very bitter, for there was none left, bond or free, and there was none to help Israel. But the Lord had not said that he would blot out the name of Israel from under heaven, so he saved them by the hand of Jeroboam the son of Joash. Even in the wickedness, he uses Jeroboam not only as a defender, but also as an expander of Israel. And when I think about passages like this, I think about passages like Romans chapter 2, verse 4, where Paul says that the patience of God should produce repentance. And the idea is, some people drew the conclusion that because things were going well for Israel, well, I guess we're headed down the right path. And what God wanted them to see was grace and mercy calling them back to Him. They had been suffering and hadn't turned back. Well, maybe in extending a kind hand to them will bring them back. And it won't. Which just goes to illustrate, they don't want the blessing. I mean, they say they do, but they don't want God's blessing. They don't want the life that God offers. They're choosing suffering. They're choosing death. They're choosing punishment instead of good things. Now he will die, and I'm sure there were tremendous records of his reign in the Chronicles of the Kings of Israel, but that's all we get on this long reigning king.
Yeah, it says he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and did not depart from the sins of Jeroboam. And the next verse it says he restored the borders according to the word of the Lord.
Yeah.
So
I wonder, at which he spoke by. So just imagine this, that you're Jonah, and I know that y'all can cover this when you cover Jonah, but just think about that. Jonah is able to go and tell a wicked king, the Lord's going to expand your border. As far as prophet jobs go, it's a pretty good job, right? Maybe it's with, he wants you to turn back, but he's going to expand. So it's not him bringing some kind of like, hey, your kingdom's going to be destroyed right now. You're going to die early. You're not going to have. He is able to give a good word to even a wicked king. And then Jonah's called to go to Nineveh and call them to repent. And I'm sure that was frustrating for him to leave what this seemed like a cushy job to him. And now he has to go to Nineveh, which was not a job that he wanted. But, of course, you've got to imagine that even with Jonah's announcement of God expanding the kingdom, there had to have been a call to repent in all of that. So, anyway. All right, you have anything else on all that? All right, now let's drop down to 2 Kings 15, verse 8. We've got Zechariah. He will reign 6 months. A guy named Shallum will conspire against him and kill him, and will take his place and reign for a month. Zechariah will be the last of Jehu's line, and this is in fulfillment of the promise of 2 Kings 10 and verse 30 that he would have 4 generations after that would reign. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, then Shallum kills him. Don't look at this stuff on Joel. We're coming back to it. And then, following him, you're going to have Menahem, Pekahiah. We'll say more about these in just a second. And I think that the timing is probably that Pekah is reigning at the same time as both of these men. It's really hard to work out the timing correctly if there's not some overlap between them. And we've had other occasions, right, where there's overlap and there's multiple kings trying to rule at one time and things like that. I do want to notice this in chapter 15 and verse 12. This was the promise of the Lord, that is the death of Zechariah, that he gave to Jehu. Your sons shall sit on the throne to the 4th generation. And so it came to pass. That's the same phrase that's used in Genesis 1, and it was so, and it was so, and it was so. So Colby mentioned earlier about God's faithfulness to his commitments and to his covenants that he makes. I think the same weight with which God spoke, let there be light, and it was so. When God says judgment's coming, and it was so. So in a positive way, the keeping of his promise covenants, and in a negative way, in the keeping of his judgment promises, and it was so. God always holds to his word in all of that. So we probably need to say more about Menahem's reign at some point, but maybe we'll just hold off on that and then use that, and we'll just jump into Joel on Wednesday night. So our goal is to just finish these couple of kingly reigns in 15 and talk about Joel on Wednesday night. Does that sound good with everybody? Great. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video to be beneficial, please follow us on Facebook or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to share it with others that you feel like may benefit from it. If you need to contact us, please contact us via email at quinn.church@yahoo.com. Also, if you're in the area, we would love for you to come visit with us at one of our assemblies. Have a good day.